would like to introduce Dr. Aparna Rao. She'll be talking about minimally invasive trabeculectomy next.
Hi everyone. So this is a form of ab interno trabeculectomy, and this is a technique that most of us will be able to do because the technique is very similar to the external trabeculectomy that we do, only with the difference that you can do it from inside as you do for any mix. Now, what is required is, unlike the other procedures, you don't need very sophisticated instruments. You just contact your retina colleagues, get the straight 25 gauge micro scissors and 25 gauge micro forceps. That's all that you need. And if you get not the disposable ones, if you get one investment like a stainless steel or titanium, that's all that you need apart from the lenses. Understand the procedure. This is an excisional procedure. This is not just incision. We excise the TM because that I feel is more important, because if we leave the TM there to fall back on the iris, you are anyway rendering it dysfunctional. So there's no point of keeping it there, because then it will go and reattach and then there may be problems. So excise the TM. Where is it required? Now, currently we are using it for a lot of indications, much similar to what we do a trabeculectomy otherwise, but yet we do not, unlike any mix, we are not doing it for very refractory glaucomas or NVGs or inflammatory glaucomas, because in those angle procedures you are still having your prohibitions and doubts that whether mix will help. So when you're sure that you can do a mix, that's where you can do an MIT also. And how do you do it? It's just practice, because if you're doing an MIGS, then you can do this. If you just practice, all it needs is understanding how the TM tissue feels, and then how exactly do you rip it so that it is completely atraumatic. So this was a journey that I started off familiarizing first with other procedures like GAT, and then which are equally effective, bang and syneculisis. Then I moved down to the other procedures before I understood how the tissue looks like, and then go to doing the excising the trap. The procedure, like I said, is very simple. If you see any strands, even in an open angle glaucoma, you can see some iris strands which are going and attaching forward. So with a cyclodialysis spatula, after you form the put the viscoelastic, just take a cyclodialysis and push the iris gently downward so that your angle is completely open. Now this is important because we excise the entire TM. Unlike the other procedures where you incise between the anterior and the posterior trabecular meshwork, we are incising at the level of the Schwalbe's line, so that you are removing the juxtacanalicular tissue also and the corneoscleral meshwork. And the second incision is actually, the first incision will be at the level of the Schwalbe's line, and the second incision will be at the level of your iris root, just above the iris, so that you are able to excise the entire TM tissue. It comes off in a very single strip. Once you have made 2 horizontal incisions, you make 2 vertical cuts with the straight micro scissors. And once you have delineated the TM tissue over 3 to 5 clock hours, you just hold with an ILM peeling forceps or end gripping forceps, as they call it. Ask your vitreoretina colleagues, they'll be able to do that. Just grasp the TM piece that you have cut vertically and then just strip it off gently. It just comes off very easily. And unlike the other procedures where you are gouging and pushing an instrument beneath the TM, here you are not touching the trabecular meshwork save for only the ends which you have delineated by the cuts. You can do blanching, or you can put trypan blue to evaluate whether your procedure is effective. And we did a study to find out whether this can be useful. We found that if you have more than 2 quadrants of blanching and trypan blue staining, you can be assured at least this patient will be controlled without medications or may not require too much medications. For us, this was like a boon, because unlike the suture GAT which we were doing prior to this, there were a lot of cases, all of you might be aware that we have a lot of macro hyphemas with GAT, and for some of our patients this is really distressing. And remember, the hyphema does not happen just on POD1, it can happen even late, few months later also. If they have a Valsalva procedure, they may be bleeding into the anterior chamber. This is not very uncommon, rare but not uncommon. So with MIT, the hyphema is intraoperative bleeding is also very minimal, and POD1 you would not find almost in all the cases, only a trickle of blood, that's it. Otherwise, the anterior chamber is completely clear. And this is because you're not forcefully ripping the trabecular meshwork. There is only a gentle stripping, and you're not touching the TM or the collector channels beneath the tissue. The amount of pus that we see in the quadrants that we have dissected is very minimal. It's very focal that we see. The fibrotic closure, or what Dr. Vinay has described as a hypertrophic scar on ASOCT, is again the amount of scar that we see is very minimal. And because there is no sudden forces of stripping away, forceful ripping away of the TM, you don't see that gush of bleed that you would normally see with GAT when you're ripping off the TM in all the 360 degrees. Because we are excising the TM, the chances of reattachment are very less with this procedure. There's less traumatic, less hyphema. Whoever has done it has always reported one thing, that yes, POD1, the cornea is clear, the chamber is clear, and we don't leave any viscoelastic. If at all there is intraoperative, we find a trickle of blood, even at the end of the procedure, what we do is just leave an air bubble. So POD1, actually the visual acuity is very good, and they don't have any rebleeding even later. And the incidence of pus, like I said, is very less with this procedure. You can keep the patient on pilocarpine for 2 to 4 weeks. Some prefer to keep it for a longer time, but I prefer to withdraw them at 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And the pus is very less. Once 1 month is over, if you wean off the pilocarpine, the chances of pus are very less. So initially we started off to do it in primary open angle glaucomas, but this is also useful now with goniosynochialisis in angle closure. We have tried it in steroid-induced glaucomas, angle PAC eyes, ocular hypertension eyes who are not otherwise tolerant to medications, and even exfoliation glaucoma. Like all the MIGs in exfoliation glaucoma eyes, this procedure works really well, with most of them being off the medications at even at 1 to 2 years. JOAG, like other MIGs, we have our reservations because the predictability is somewhat different, because some eyes perform very well, while the very advanced JOAGs, some of them, the IOP spikes may happen. And even patients who are allergic to drops, or you can combine this with phacoemulsification, or even vitreoretinal surgeries where you want angle control, IOP control, you can do this procedure because it's atraumatic. And angle recession, again, is one of the reservations that I have. It does not perform well like any other GAT or other procedures. The advanced JOAGs and angle recessions, you do this with caution and assess the patient. Or offer that only if you're sure that your mixed procedure, angle surgery, is going to work in that patient. So there are expanding indications that this procedure can be used. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
I would request the delegates to please spread out, because there are others who are not able to view the screen. So maybe on
So
this
you've
side.
also done
Can we
histopathology
get more
of
chairs?
that trabecular
Yeah,
meshwork
so
of
I did not include here. So the incentive for me to get the trabecular meshwork was not actually clinical. The moment I could understand that the trabecular meshwork is out, the incentive for me was to put it down to downstream analysis for basic research, because all of us glaucoma surgeons remember that the trabecular meshwork that we get externally has cornea, sclera, and the TM in the sample is a small part at one corner, and many of the samples may not even have the TM at all. What you have removed is a corneoscleral block. So this was a pain for us when I was doing my PhD on molecular biology in glaucoma. We were not able to do any basic research on the trabecular meshwork. So when we got these samples, now when we analyze the histopathology and put it down to other analysis like single cell or transcriptomics, this tissue, you will be amazed at, you can see all the 3 layers, namely your juxtacanalicular, your corneoscleral, and sometimes the uveal meshwork intact with a lot of cells, which is almost very rare in your external trap specimens. So this I am using it for basic research applications. I'm sure all of you can also do that. Yes. Angle recessions, yeah. Yeah, so I have done, why I said I'm doing it with the reservations, because when you do the procedure, if you have touched the TM, which is naive, which naive meaning that you have not put any suture or any instrument beneath the TM, that tissue, when you strip it and take it off, put it on a filter paper, it will be, I describe to everyone knows how sushi, the fish skin looks like, a thin layer. The TM feels just like that, a shiny, glistening layer. Across, you may say 4 to 5 millimeters, right? When you flatten it on a filter paper. But in angle recessions, when you try to touch, grip the trabecular meshwork with your ILM forceps, you would find that you have a very sandpaper or a gritty sensation. You can just feel that. And when you strip that, you can see that all over it has a very gritty sensation. It does not strip very easily. So there's a lot of fibrosis. So when that has actually happened, at least my take is that it's not just the trabecular meshwork, the distal pathways distal to the trabecular meshwork are also fibrous. So only taking the trabecular meshwork or doing any angle surgery may not be sufficient in that patient. So when I find any abnormal, like Dr. Vinay has described, abnormal iris processes at the angle dysgenesis as we call it. So when you see that, or in case of angle recession, we are able to see a lot of pigments and abnormal iris, there I don't prefer to do an angle surgery, not just MIT, not any angle surgery, because there I know that it's not just the TM, it's the distal pathway as well.
Ma'am, that was a beautiful surgery. I
Thank
just wanted to ask a question. When we do angle surgery and try to peel off the trabecular meshwork, it's very easy because it's porous and it's easy to peel. So, but when we take the incision from the Schwalbe's line to the base of the iris, it will include the area of the scleral spur and the area in front of the
The
trabecular meshwork.
scleral spur will not get included because it detaches from that.
Okay.
So when you strip it, the detachment is not very traumatic, it strips. That's why I said the second by experience, I've had experiences, if you try to strip it, if you have not cut the inferior horizontal incision, if you have not made, some of the iris strands that are attaching there, that will not allow your stripping to happen. So with a cyclodialysis spatula, I always try to cut those iris strands and I make an incision not only at the Schwalbe's line, but a very superficial incision with a MVR blade at the level of that, just above the scleral spur, so that tissue can be
And you
taken
don't
out.
encounter any cyclodialysis clefts
No,
with this?
no, never, because you're not going deep. Never go deep, because you remember, I mean, you have to visualize that, yes, when you're making an incision with your MVR blade or anything, you may encounter your ciliary processes behind the iris, so always be careful. So like I said, the second incision has to be more superficial as opposed to your first one. You have to be cognizant of the fact that the ciliary process may be behind.